Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome to our program briefing for first year engineering. My name is Dr. Neal Murphy. I'm the program director for first year. So if you like, I'm like your single point of contact from the academic staff. So my email address will be given to you in part of this presentation. So just say don't hesitate to contact me if you have any problems or questions that arise during the year. Stage one is actually, well, there's a whole new set of jargon and lingo that you'll need to learn now that you've joined UCD. One of them is a program, okay? So stage one is actually a program in its own right because it's a common first year. And after that, once you make your decision about what type of engineering you'd like to study in the future, for example, a BE in mechanical engineering, you'll go into that new program, that different program in second year. So for now, you're in the program you're in is stage one engineering. So my co-hosts today are Deborah Heaney and Caroline McCann, who you can see hopefully on the screen there. Now both of these colleagues are working in the Engineering and Architecture Program Office, okay? And these two people are going to be very important to you guys during the year, and indeed for your subsequent years in UCD. Anything to do with registration, for example, for your modules, or general queries about your records or whatever, you will generally end up talking to Deborah and Caroline. So it's just nice that you see their faces today, so you know what they look like. Okay, so, and again, if I forget anything, Deborah has kindly offered to jump in and remind me, or maybe to answer any questions that we have. Okay, so just to start off, some housekeeping. We are recording the session today, and then we're going to upload this recording to our YouTube channel, okay, which is UCD EngArch, Engineering and Architecture, afterwards, just in case you've missed it or you miss anything, or you'd like to go back and look at a portion of it again. The presentation that I'm going to share with you, the slides will also be uploaded to our College of Engineering and Architecture website. So again, you can download that and browse through it again afterwards at your leisure. Now, I'm sure you'll all have plenty of questions at the end of this. So if you have any questions today, what we'd ask you to do is just type them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen there, which is in the control panel there at the bottom of the screen. And what we'll do then is at the end, we won't deal with questions as we go through, but we'll deal with them at the end, I think, in the interest of time. And at the end, we will have a look at those questions, and those that can be answered straight away, we will try and do that. And otherwise, for the rest of them, if there are too many questions to deal with today, Caroline and Deborah are going to put them together as sort of like a frequently asked questions document, if you like, and email them out to you with the answers to those questions. Okay, and we're hoping to finish in around an hour today. And for the best viewing experience, you've got to make sure that you're in speaker view mode, which you can toggle in the right-hand corner of your screen. Okay, so hopefully that's all clear enough. And I'm just going to share now the presentation with you. Okay, and so this is so already this morning you've met the Dean, Professor Ahern, and this presentation today is more, I suppose, like the nuts and bolts of the engineering program that you've embarked on. So there's lots of detail in here, and I certainly don't expect you to remember it all, but that's again why we're recording it, so you can go back and have a look later on. Now that's my contact details there, neal.murphy@ucd.ie. And as I say, if you have any queries down the line, you can always contact me. Okay, so other important contacts, well, two of them are, or one of them is here. You met, as I say, Professor Hearn this morning, the Dean of Engineering. You have Deborah here today. Another colleague in the program office is Sue Philpott, and you would also have met Colleen Doyle. So these are all important contacts for you to bear in mind, and you might be pointed in their direction at some point during your time at UCD. Now, obviously, under normal times, the building would be open and we'd all be here, and you could just wander into the program office and meet with Deborah and Caroline face to face. But of course, we're not in normal times now, so the best way to contact the office, the program office, is this way here. So it's using what we call Connector. Okay, so this is, if you log on to this website here, you'll be faced with this screen, and basically what this is, it allows you to say what it is you're contacting, what's your query, what's the nature of your query, and then you basically submit that query, and the guys will get back to you very soon to answer whatever question you have. Okay, so this is much better than trying to email the office, because, well, we can control what's happening much more closely using this method. Okay, so that's how you should contact the program office while we're effectively under these conditions that we're in at the moment. Okay. The other thing to point you in the direction of is our first year website. So, and I'm sure again you've had a look at that. There's all sorts of useful information on that website, and again, there's lots of stuff that you might want to download and have a look at. So I'll just, as I say, flag that for you there. I suppose one of the first things you've been doing is thinking about modules and registration and so on. Now, most of your modules are what we call compulsory core modules, and you have been already registered, if you like, automatically to those modules. But of course, as you progress in UCD, for example, next trimester or in subsequent years, you will need to register for your own modules. And it's worthwhile, I think, to have a look at some of these guides about registration and how to register online and so on. So, you know, you can check your own records and check that you're registered properly for your modules and so on. Okay, so I'll just point them out to you. Now, there are, of course, a few important dates that you need to bear in mind. Module registration usually stays open for a couple of weeks. And in fact, as you can see there, the closing date for this trimester is Friday, the 9th of October. Okay, now that's an important date for registration purposes, because any module that you drop after that date, you will still be subject to fees for, and it will appear on your record that you took it, even though you may not have taken it, if you know what I mean. So if you want to drop something, or you want to change your module registration, do so before that date, the 9th of October. Okay. The other important date, of course, is that we start lectures on Monday next week, the 28th of September. And we'll go into the details of your modules and the arrangements for each module a little later on now. But just suffice to say now that your first lecture will be at 9 o'clock on Monday morning, and it will be online. And if you look at your timetable, you'll see that the module is called Electronic and Electrical Engineering. And I'm sure you'll be, if you haven't already received an email from the lecturer there, you will be receiving details about how to access that online lecture. Okay, so everything kicks off properly, if you like, next Monday. Okay, so we used to call these terms, well, they started off called terms, and then they became semesters, and now they've changed again, and now we call them trimesters. Okay, so we have the autumn trimester, spring, and the summer trimester. So we're currently in the autumn trimester. And you can see here the 6 modules that you will be doing this trimester. And I suppose it's quite easy for you because you don't get any choice in the matter. These are compulsory modules that everyone will do. Okay, so there's no choices to be made about these at this point, which is good. And so we're going to just run through some of the details about these. You can see that we've got physics, chemistry, a mathematics module, which is the introduction to calculus for engineers. I'm sure you'd have done calculus for the Leaving Cert, integration and differentiation. And then, if you like, there's a few modules that you certainly won't have done probably before. So, for example, design. So we have a module here called Creativity in Design, which is a really nice module, which gets you thinking about the whole design process and designing and building little prototypes and so on for your ideas. We also introduce you to electronics, and we also introduce you to engineering computing. Now, this is actually a relatively recent addition to our syllabus. We used to have it that computing was an option for many people. But of course, really, everyone should know how to program a computer. And so in recent years, we've introduced this as a compulsory core module. So again, some people find this quite tricky, actually quite difficult, because it's so new. Everyone's used to using computers and using phones, but perhaps you haven't actually programmed a computer before. So that can be a bit of a challenge, but well worth persevering with because it's obviously very, very important. Okay, now your labs and tutorials and so on that you'll be doing this trimester, you've already been registered to those. So you don't have to do anything. You've literally been put into groups, and those groups have been assigned certain times in the timetable. Okay, so nothing to be done there at all. You'll see that there are a couple of options and electives and so on next trimester after Christmas, but none of those, you don't have to worry about those at this point. Okay, so obviously we're in very different times, as I say, and I suppose we've been planning your return and your income into the program, obviously since early summer. And back in June, we were very hopeful that the COVID restrictions would have been eased, and that so many more of you would be face to face on campus. Unfortunately, things seem to be getting worse instead of better, and now we're facing level 3 restrictions in Dublin. And in fact, the UCD has even adopted slightly stricter, closer to level 4 restrictions in terms of social contact and so on. Because I suppose, in fairness, the last thing we really want is to be encouraging huge gangs of you to be congregating here in UCD. So initially, we set up the timetable in such a way that we divided the class up into 2 halves. And our hope was that half of you would be on campus, say this week, and the other half would be on campus next week. And you do that every second week effectively. And we kind of set things up like that so that you would have activities on the week that you were here, okay? And then when you were back at home or wherever, off campus, that your activities would be online, okay? And that was our philosophy, if you like. That worked, that was fine because half the class was around 170 students, and our big lecture theatres here could actually accommodate that number, even with social distancing of 1 meter if people were wearing their masks. So we really were quite hopeful that we could have at least 170 of you, half the class, in at a given time. But now, as you know, the restrictions are still there, and we are actually limited to 50 people in a room, no matter how big the room is. And that includes the lecturer, okay? So typically 49 students is the maximum number that we're allowed to have in a room. Now, there are about 330 or 340 of you in the class. And so you can see that the problem that poses for us all. that we want to bring you in and let you meet the staff and let you meet the lecturers face to face, but only 49 of you can come in at a given time. So from that point of view, unfortunately, you will end up with limited, quite limited face-to-face contact, okay, for the moment. If things ease, we will change things and we will try and increase the number of face-to-face in the class, okay? But that's all we can do for now. Okay, so you will have received an email from the registrar of the university. So the registrar is like the vice president of the university. And in that email, you will have seen that he is encouraging that the small sessions, like the laboratories, for example, go ahead face-to-face as normal, as planned. And that's allowed under the guidelines as well. So as a result, where possible, we're going to run the laboratories face-to-face from the first week, from next week. Well, I suppose the only problem is that only a small number are let into the laboratories because of social distancing and so on. And so you won't all be able to do your laboratory, obviously, on the same week. So we'll come into that. We'll have a look at the details of that now in a moment. Okay, so as I said, there are 6 modules that you're going to be doing this trimester. And as the X Factor would say, in no particular order, we can run through them. So the first one here is chemistry for engineers. Now, I know from experience that many of you don't have chemistry from the Leaving Cert, but that's fine. The lecturer has set up the course so that they tell me that the first half of the course would be familiar for somebody who has done chemistry for the Leaving. So that will bring everybody up to speed on the basics of chemistry. And then the second half of the course will be new for everyone. So that's how we try and keep you interested, even if you've done some chemistry before. So the plan for chemistry, so every module is run by what we call a module coordinator. And so we would just generally call them the lecturer, but the official title is the module coordinator. And every module coordinator really is in a different school. You know, so you might have the School of Chemistry or the School of Physics or the School of Mechanical Engineering or whatever. And they have quite a lot of freedom in terms of how they want to structure their module. So for that reason, many of these modules are structured slightly differently to each other. Okay, so you might say, well, why aren't they all the same? But that's the main reason for that. So for example, in chemistry, your timetable to have 2 lectures per week. And we only have 11 weeks this trimester. We would normally have 12, but because of the delays in the Leaving Cert results coming out, we're down to 11 weeks. Okay, so therefore you've got 22 lectures of chemistry in this module. And you can see the times there, Tuesday at 9 o'clock and Thursday at 9 o'clock. Okay, and that goes on for the whole trimester. And those lectures will all be online. So the whole class will attend these lectures using Zoom or our virtual learning environment called Brightspace. Again, the module coordinator will tell you the details about how to connect to those online lectures. Okay. So the chemistry guys have also timetabled what they call 4 workshops online, where they will be doing slightly different things with you than in the main lectures. And I guess the important thing to note here is that the labs, that you'll be doing 2 lab experiments, if you like, face to face. So you actually come on campus for those 2 experiments. Okay. And again, the large number of people in the class means that we have to, you know, I think each of those small chemistry labs can only hold something like 12 people, just to give you an idea. So when you're trying to schedule, you know, 330 people to do 2 experiments, you can imagine that you're going to need quite a lot of slots on the timetable so that everybody can do that. So the times that are scheduled are Tuesdays and Fridays, as you can see, and for chemistry, these are 3-hour sessions. Okay, And each of you will come in for 2 physical experiments, 2 of those 3-hour sessions at some point during the next 11 weeks. Okay? And just to point out that your timetable says that these will start on Tuesday, the 6th of October. Okay? So if you're scheduled for that day, even if you're the first one here, that's fine. Don't worry. It will be going ahead on that date. Okay? So you just need to make sure that you're here on campus for that. Now, the chemistry lecturer, Dr. Hooper, has asked me to point out to you that there are some introductory videos that he's posted on, so what we call our Brightspace page. So every module has a Brightspace page, and you'll be shown how to get on there. And once you get onto the Brightspace page for your chemistry module, you'll see introductory videos have been put up there on things like lab safety in the chemistry lab. And you're expected to view those videos, and there might even be a short quiz, for example, just to make sure that you've watched them and you know what you're doing. You'll also need to buy some personal protection equipment, white coats and so on, before you are allowed into the lab. And of course, these will last you for all the time that you are in university. So a few things there, that you need to do, if you like, before you show up physically to do your lab. So keep an eye on that, and please read your emails from your lecturers and your module coordinators. Okay, the next one we'll talk about then is electronic and electrical engineering. So in this one, actually, you've been scheduled for three lectures per week. So 33 lectures altogether. So that's a lot of lectures on electronics and electronic circuits. Normally we would have labs for this, but in fact, unfortunately, the way the labs are configured, we won't be able to run these labs physically and face-to-face. So what the lecturer is going to do there is he's going to run the lab effectively as an online experience for you. And I believe he's going to show you things like what you would normally do if you were here is you try and build an electronic circuit. And of course, when we try and build these things, we all make mistakes and we cross wires and so on, and the thing doesn't work properly. And then part of the exercise is usually to figure out, well, why isn't it working properly and what have I done wrong? So part of that video online experience, the lecturer will show you the typical kind of errors that people make when they're building circuits. And so it's as though you were there with him doing it yourself. So hopefully you will still get the learning outcomes that you need from the online experience there. Okay, so that's mainly an online module. Our next one then is creativity in design. So this one is a little different to the others in the sense that, well, it's obviously all about design projects. And the way this works is, first of all, there'll be a lecture on a Tuesday to teach you really how to sketch. So it's not as though you're going to art college, but it's very important for engineers, really, if they have an idea, how do you communicate that with a colleague or with somebody else, okay? And generally, we try and do that through sketching. So there will actually be dedicated lectures on sketching on a Tuesday, and they will take place online. And then you will be brought in occasionally to have some face-to-face time in front with the lecturer as well, okay? So again, as with all of the others, we only have 48 people maximum in the lecture theatre at a given time. So at the moment, we obviously are in kind of emergency measures, and we've been told that because we're now operating as level 3 or level 4, that the next 2 weeks lectures for all the modules, the lectures will be online, okay? Not the labs, but the lectures. So, but after the next 2 weeks, hopefully things will settle down again, and then some of you will be able to come in 48 at a time to attend your lectures in person according to your timetable. Okay, so that's the plan there. Now, in the design studio, the way this module is going to be set up, the 350 of you in the class are going to be broken up into design groups of 6 or 7 students. So small design groups. And of course, that'll be probably the best way of actually making your first friends in the class, because you'll probably be working quite closely with those 6 or 7 people. And because, again, of the restrictions and we can't all be coming in every week physically, the plan is that on any given day, so on a Wednesday is when most of the action takes place here, on Wednesday, one representative from your design group of 6 or 7, one of you will attend in person. And you'll attend the lecture from 2 to 3, actually, on Wednesday. And then you'll go into your design studio with your other colleagues, and you'll work there for 3 hours on your projects. And the idea is that the person who's there representing the group physically, if you like, is listening to the instructions and so on from the lecturer, and then you will connect to the rest of your group, if you like, online, and they'll be at home connecting to you, and you'll be inside here, getting your instructions and so on from the module coordinator. Okay, so in a way, that's probably the best we can do to try and make sure that every group has a representative here every week for the designs. Okay. The next one then, as I say, is a little bit new for many of you, and that's basically how do you program a computer. And we've recognized that there are a couple of very well used and very important software packages that everybody we feel should know about. One of them you possibly know about already, that's just Microsoft Excel. But I don't know whether you realized that you can actually use Microsoft Excel to do quite complicated calculations and so on as well as just using it as a spreadsheet. So for the first few weeks, we're going to show you how to get the most out of Microsoft Excel. And then there's another software system called MATLAB. And MATLAB is one of the most important engineering type software systems. And all of you have a site license, access to a site license for MATLAB. And the second half, if you like, of this module will be how to program a computer using MATLAB to do engineering type calculations. Okay, so that's an interesting and quite a challenging module, I think, in itself. And again, the way this is worked out, there'll be 22 lectures. There's 2 lectures per week. They both take place actually on a Thursday. And then, so there the lecturer, Professor Mooney, will go through how do you use MATLAB and how do you program in it and so on. And then most, of course, of the work would be you sitting down trying to write programs using this software. And so the computer labs are really important for this, for this module. And so again, we've got a computer room that will take the allowed maximum of 48 people. And you've been scheduled to come in groups of 48 to attend face-to-face some weeks, and those days that you're not face-to-face, you will have access to the tutors and demonstrators online to help you with your programming. Okay, but that's quite good. It's quite a good session. You'll be in here physically every second week on one of these dates here, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. As you can see, lots of sessions scheduled there for your computer lab. So every second week, you will actually be here face-to-face. Okay. Mathematics then, this semester, you've got, as I said, you've got calculus, and next, I'm calling it trimester, and next trimester then you've got linear algebra, different type of mathematical module. So this module actually lends itself to online delivery, as you could imagine, maths being a fairly theoretical subject. So in fact, you're going to have 3 lectures per week and 1 tutorial every week as well. So lots of contact hours there with your maths professor. Okay, and hopefully at the end of it all, you'll be experts on the very important subjects of differentiation and integration. Physics is, I think, the last one. So you've got 2 physics modules, one this trimester and another one after Christmas. So this is Physics for Engineers 1. Again, this is going to be a blend, like in many of the others, where you come in some days face-to-face and other days you have your lectures online. So, for example, here you've got you're scheduled for 3 lectures a week. They're called lectures and tutorials. The lectures, again, the notation here that the lecturer has used, the lecture he's referring to as an online lecture for the entire class at the same time, and he's calling the tutorials those sessions where the 48 of you will be in here face to face. Okay. Now, of course, just because you're not in here face to face, don't panic. The lecture will be recorded. All of these lectures will be recorded for all the modules, and you'll be able to access them from wherever you are. Okay, so you won't miss out on anything, but it might just be, it would be a nice bonus if on a particular week you happen to be here physically meeting the lecturer and interacting with your friends and so on. Okay, and again, the way this has been set up for the face-to-face, it says here, a given student, for example, will attend face-to-face on both Tuesday and Thursday on, say, week number 2, and then 4 weeks later, in week 6, they will attend again on the Tuesday and the Thursday for the lectures. So in other words, you'll be here for 4 tutorials face-to-face in this module, okay, over the course of the 11 weeks. Also, you'll do 2 lab experiments, like with chemistry, 2 physical lab experiments face-to-face in the lab, and that actually starts, just to flag this with you, this starts pretty immediately, actually. It starts next week. So if you're scheduled for next Wednesday, the 30th of September, that's going ahead as planned. Okay, so you can show up for that and do your physics lab. Now it's worth talking a little bit about assessment. In the past, in more normal times, there was always final exams in most of these modules, but now it makes sense not to rely on final exams so much. So in actual fact, now for you guys, there will only be 3 modules. 3 of those modules will have a final exam. And you can see that these are the 3 here. So in your computing, you'll have a final exam, but as you can see, it's only going to be worth 30% of the total marks. So it's not going to be a deal breaker for you really there. Most of the marks are going for your practical work, the computer programs that you've written during the year and so on. Okay, and then the other ones, the electronic engineering, the final exam is worth quite a lot. It's worth 65%. And in physics, the final exam is also worth quite a lot. It's worth 60%. And the other 3 modules will be completely continuous assessment. Okay, which is nice as well. But of course, you have to be careful that you keep up and that you spread yourself, you know, that you manage your time, if you like, well, so that on a given week you say, okay, I've got these assignments to do, and make sure you put aside the time to complete those assignments and submit them. Because otherwise, of course, things will pile up on you and you'll start maybe becoming in a bit of a panic maybe about things. So keep on top of everything, okay, as they come in. So you've got things like design projects, you've got lab reports, you've got computer programs to write. The lecturers will be giving you quizzes, multiple choice quizzes on Brightspace and so on. So as you progress through the semester, or the trimester, you'll be effectively accumulating marks. And then when you get to the end, in many cases, you won't even have to do a final exam. Okay, so that's quite a good system, I think. Okay, so I just had a quick look to see what sort of contact hours you can expect to have this trimester. And you can see there at the bottom that I would say about 20 hours per week you will have contact hours. Okay, now that's online as well as face-to-face. That's the total. But you should, you know, if you do attend all your scheduled lectures when you're supposed to, according to your timetable, you'll be busy for about 20 hours a week directly. And then, of course, you have your work to do. So you have to go off and do your assignments and so on. And, you know, that will take you. And, of course, you have to study the material, much of which will be new for you. So, obviously, when it boils down to it, it is really a 40-hour a week job, if you like, that you're embarking on. So I'd say that really because some people maybe don't realize how much time it takes to do an engineering degree, and maybe they sign up as to do some part-time work, you know, in a shop or whatever, and they overstretch themselves. So I completely understand that many of you do need to take a part-time job, but what I simply say to you is be sensible about it. And don't take on too many hours, you know, working in duns or something like that, because I've seen situations where, you know, the employer wants you, and then they ring you up and say, "Oh, come in for 20 hours next week," and you can't really say no, or you feel you can't say no, and then, you know, you start falling behind with your work, your college work. So, you know, be very careful. Just try and limit your part-time working. Okay. So then after Christmas, hopefully things will be back to normal. Of course, there's no guarantees, but either way, these are the modules that you'll be looking forward to after Christmas. Okay, so now you can see things are looking a little bit more complicated maybe. We have some core modules, which are listed here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've got physics again, different, like part 2 of the physics course. Energy engineering, obviously very important in today's world. Linear algebra, that maths course I was talking about. And then we have a thing called mechanics for engineers, which is essentially very like applied maths for the Leaving Cert. Okay, so those of you who've done applied maths probably find that one, you know, much easier than those who haven't done applied maths. But once you've done your physics this trimester, you'll be introduced to mechanics as part of that. So hopefully things will be a bit more familiar by the time you get to this module after Christmas. Okay, so these are the 4 that everyone does. These are what we call our core modules after Christmas. And then to make up the other 2, as you can see here, you choose 1 option and 1 free elective. So 1 option means that you choose from a list, and the list that you're given is these 4 options here. Okay, now these have been chosen really because again, you're going to be starting to think then about which type of engineering do you want to study in subsequent years. So some of you will know that you want to become, you know, a civil engineer or a structural engineer. Some of you might think, well, I'm definitely going to become a chemical engineer or a biomedical engineer or whatever. So these options here allow you, if you like, to sample those types of areas. So for example, this was one that we added fairly recently in recent years, understanding human disease. And that's actually given by one of our colleagues in biomedical sciences. So, you know, if you're into biology and biomedical engineering, that would be something we would strongly advise you to take. This terminology here of an elective, you've heard presumably of this Horizons program that's here in UCD. And the idea there is that during the course of your degree, that you can take quite a range of modules that are not related, in your case, to engineering. They don't have to be engineering modules. So for example, if you have an interest outside engineering, maybe you have an interest in languages, or you have an interest in music or physics or something like that, astronomy or whatever, you can take modules in those areas. You know, there's a couple of modules per year are generally electives. Alternatively, you can use your electives to take engineering type modules if you want to go deeper, if you like, in engineering. So that's completely up to you. But in this year, in first year, you actually only have 1 elective to choose from. So as I say, you could choose one of these as well as choosing 1 for an option, or you could choose something else completely, like you want to start a new language, or you want to continue a language that you've studied in school or whatever. Okay. Now, so registration for these options will take place in January. Isn't that right, Deborah, I believe?
Yeah, Dr. Murphy, in terms of the 1 option that you have to choose from the list of 4 there, yeah, no, the students should choose their option module now for spring. So one of those 4 options. Now, I suppose that the thing is they could change their mind. So if they're
Yeah.
not sure, they should still choose one. So they have one chosen on their timetable. And, you know, if they have a change of mind during the trimester in January, then they can change their mind and choose one of the other options. But I would suggest everybody chooses their option. And if there is a lab and tutorial associated with it, choose that as well. And the only thing that the students can choose at this point in time is the elective, because that is not available to them until January.
Okay, great. So I suppose the message there is have a look at the module descriptors on the website, see which one you like the look of now, choose one, but you don't feel you'll have to stick with it if you prefer something else.
Yeah.
Okay, when you get there. And there are practicals, different slots that you can choose, for example, different days for your labs and so on. So you might want to have a think about that, what would suit your life better than others. Okay. So these are just a little bit more about what's in each of those modules. I don't think we need to worry too much about that at this stage, but they're there for you. You can have a look and browse through them afterwards if you like. Okay. These are some of the elective or additional options that you could choose after Christmas as well. And again, I'd encourage you to go and have a look at the website. All of these things have a thing called a module descriptor. So even if you just Google UCD and put in this descriptor here, you'll generally be brought straight to the page, and then you can see exactly what's involved in those modules. Okay, so it's nice just to have a look and sort of think ahead a bit about this. Okay, so as I said, one of your modules this trimester is a thing called Creativity in Design, and the module coordinator for that is Dr. Sarah Cotterill, and she has asked me to point out to you, and I think she's probably sent you an email herself about it, that you will need to have some basic art, if you like, art equipment to go into your sketching next week. Okay, your sketching, online sketching lectures next Tuesday. Okay, so please make it your business to acquire these items here. They're not too onerous, obviously. You should be able to get them in any decent art supply shop. You can, if you are on campus, these are also available in the UCD Students' Union shop, which should be open next week, but you'll get them anywhere, okay? So these are the things that you do need to have for next Tuesday, okay? And these are what we call the individual requirements, so each person needs these. And then additionally, as I said, you will be split up into groups of 6 or 7, and you'll be working away, making prototypes of your designs and so on. And as the module coordinator has pointed out to me here, the following equipment is helpful for prototype creation. It's not exhaustive, and it may be replaced with other common household items, you know, so things like colored card, plasticine, scissors, sticky tape, etc. These are the kind of things that you will need for making simple prototypes. Okay. Now, I mean, again, some of the terminology and so on in UCD will be new to you, of course. And if you look back on some of these codes here, for example, you might wonder what's involved here with these codes. The first code generally refers to the school in the university that's delivering the module. So, for example, EEN here would be given by the Electrical and Electronic Engineering school, okay? And then we have another code here which identifies the module itself. And the very first digit here tells you, obviously, what the level of the module is. And you can see here what those levels mean. And of course, most of what you'll be doing this year will be introductory, and they will all generally be codes with 1 on them. And then in second year and so on, you'll typically get level 2 and level 3 then, and so on. Okay, so that's just in case you were wondering what those codes actually mean. It's only the first letter that actually means something in terms of the level. Now, most modules that you'll be taking this year, all of the modules you'll be taking this year carry what we call 5 credits. And credits are kind of like a currency in a way, which allows one university to compare their course with another. And if somebody says, well, I'm taking 5 of these European credit transfers, so ECTS, anyone anywhere in Europe, if you like, would know roughly what sort of level of workload was involved in that module. Okay, so a 5 credit module here would be similar to a 5 credit module in Germany, for example. And as you can see, again, the international guidelines are that one of these 5 credit modules, typically you would need to put in about 100 to 125 hours of student effort. Now that includes everything: going to lectures, doing your study afterwards, and doing your assignments and preparing for your exams and so on. Okay, but that's quite a lot. I mean, obviously that's something like 10 hours a week if you think about it over an 11-week trimester. And you've got 6 of these. So even based on that, it's kind of talking about a 60-hour-a-week effort. Now, obviously not every student is as dedicated as that, but it just kind of goes to show you, it's just worth thinking about that, the sort of commitment that we are expecting from you all. Okay, so it's certainly, whilst it's very important as well that you play your sports and you have fun and all the rest of it, don't have so much fun that you forget about studying, okay, because there is a lot to be done. Okay, if you wanted some good advice, I would say don't forget to attend all your lectures. It sounds like a very basic thing, but you know, when you're at school, well, generally your mum or dad is there saying to you, you know, you've got to get up for school tomorrow and make sure that you're there. And then, you know, your teacher will be complaining if you don't show up and so on. Here, nobody really pays much attention to whether you're here or not here. Okay, so I think some people find this a bit hard to get used to, and some people think, well, this is great, you know, I can go out and have fun in the night, and I can, you know, sleep late and not go to class and all the rest of it. Very bad idea, okay, not to attend your lectures and your tutorials. Even if you're, I always say, even if you're sitting there with a hangover, still attend, because even if you're only half listening to what the lecturer is saying, it's better than nothing, okay? And it's going in on some level, and at least you know that today in physics you did, you know, light or sound or whatever it was. Whereas if you stay at home, you stay in bed, you don't know what's going on, okay? And you can very quickly get into a bad habit of not attending, and then you'll fail your exams. Okay, as we saw, continuous assessment is a very big part of the total marks. Some cases it makes up the entire module. So that's really important then, that you try and do very well. Get an A if you can in your lab reports, in your assignments and so on. So do the very best you can with all of those assignments that you're given. And then if you like, all of that, those marks will be in the bag, you know, by the time you get to the end, and it'll really stand to you. Try and be organized, and it's easier said than done, but once you understand, once you get into the flow of things, you'll realize how many hours you'll need to put aside for your various assignments and so on, and try and stick to that plan, okay? I usually say as well that you should download recent exam papers as a sort of a guide as to what's expected of you, what sort of questions you're going to be asked. That's less relevant maybe now, because the types of exams are going to be online and they're going to be multiple choice and so on. So maybe your lecturer would have more typical multiple choice exams that you could have a look at that to prepare yourself. But still, recent exam papers are a good idea to get an indication of what's expected of you at the end of your module. Now, the other thing to remember is that you must pass every module. There's no escape, as I say. If you don't pass, you'll have to repeat or do it again, okay? So, but having said that, you know, it's not the end of the world if you don't pass either, because you have got that opportunity to resit. So, you know, if you're a person who gets anxious about things, there's no need to get too anxious about this. If everybody tends to slip up once or twice along the way, and you know, it's not a big deal. I would say work with your module coordinator, work with your lecturers, and contact them and keep in touch with them, and they will help you to pass it the next time round if you don't pass it the first time round. Okay, usually we have resit exams in December or in May if you need to take that. Okay. These are a few dates for exam periods and so on. Just again for your records. Very often we would have more time at the end of the trimester coming up to Christmas. But because things are a bit late this year starting, we start our exams on the 14th of December. We have a very short exam period, and we often had a week off where you had a week off where you could study. That will not be happening this year. So there isn't very much time between the end of your teaching trimester and the start of your exams. Okay, so just to bear that in mind. So again, look at your calendar and plan what way you're going to study for your final exams for those 3 modules that have a final exam and so on. Okay, in the spring trimester then you can see the dates. You actually do have a reading week next trimester in April, and the exams are in May. Okay, I think that's probably most of the really important stuff. There's other stuff here, for example, which would be of general interest to you, but I'm kind of aware that time is pushing on. But anyway, the grades that you'll be given in your exams and in your assignments will be letters. They will be grades. They won't be percentages. Okay, so this is kind of similar to what you're used to in school. And I suppose what's a bit different here in college is that corresponding to every grade, we have a thing called a grade point, which is a number. And as you do many sort of 12 modules every year over the 4 or 5 years that you're here, the average grade point, so-called grade point average that you end up with, will determine the class of honors that you get in your final degree, as we'll see. Okay, so this is how things work. All of these grades are mapped onto these grade points, and then they're averaged at the end of each year, for example. So you'll end up with a grade point average for each year. You know, so obviously only starting now, but when you're finishing up your degree, for example, as I say, the class of honors, first class honors or second class honors and so on, it does depend on your grade point average. Okay, so it's a long time away. I won't get too bogged down with that, but you can have a look through those slides and just familiarize yourself with the grade point average system. Okay, the other thing I suppose you want to be thinking about is, what am I going to do in the future? What am I going to do for the rest of my time in college? Am I going to do a bachelor's degree? Am I going to do a master's degree, and so on? And I guess most people would aspire to becoming what we call a chartered engineer, which is like a professional qualification. And this is something, it's a qualification that is awarded to you by the professional body in Ireland that governs the engineering profession. So it's not something you can actually study for as such, but you are awarded, you can apply to become a chartered engineer by this institution called Engineers Ireland. And you can become a chartered engineer if you have a minimum of 4 years experience after you've finished once you have a suitable experience after you finish college and a suitable degree, okay? And the degree that you will need, according to the latest regulations, are a master's degree or equivalent. So it's just worth bearing in mind that you probably, by the time you get to this point, you should be really considering doing a master's degree. Now, what degrees will be open to you next year and so on? You can either do a bachelor's, 4-year degree, or a 5-year master's, okay? So these will all be explained to you closer as we go through this year. Actually, you'll be hearing more about this, so there's no need to be getting too bogged down with it now. But our standard master's degree is called ME, Master of Engineering, and BE is the 4-year bachelor degree. This is a very busy slide, and this kind of shows you all the options you have. And it really is quite confusing, I suppose, to look at it. But basically, you start off here on day 1, and you do your basic, your core modules that we've been talking about. And then in stage 2, you have a choice to make as to which type of engineering you'd like to study further. And whatever one of these guys you choose, you'll be in that stream for years 2 and 3. And then at the end of year 3, you can make a decision as to whether you want to just finish up with a bachelor's degree or move on to your master's. So it's a kind of a seamless process if you do it this way. And you can see that there's a huge variety of master's degrees you can do, and quite a long list also of bachelor's degrees that you can do. So there's plenty of scope there, and it's well worth thinking a little bit about this as the year goes on as to what type of engineering and what type of degree you'd like to do. So these are your bachelor's degrees, and this again is what you'd be trying to choose from going into second year. Which of these streams do you see yourself going into? Okay, and then in later years you can choose between these master's degrees. Now, trying to decide which discipline do you choose, it can be tricky, and we try and help you with that decision by running information sessions. And so later in this trimester, we will run presumably online type information sessions where we will get speakers, for example, graduates maybe from this program in UCD, who you maybe have worked in industry for some time, maybe started their own business or whatever, and they'll come in and they'll try and, I suppose, convince you why you should do mechanical engineering or biomedical engineering or civil or whatever. And at the end of those sessions, you should be in a better position. You should have more information about what's involved in those different types of engineering. And then you can decide, hopefully, at the end of this year, at the end of your first year in April or May, where you want to go in second year. And at that point, you'll be asked to fill in a form and choose your discipline for years 2 and 3. You've already been introduced to the library, I think, in some of the other orientation activities. Again, it's a very important resource for you. We also, in addition to the physical library being here on campus, of course, you have access to the library website, and they, for example, have invested lots of money this year in electronic books, e-books, and so many of the books on your modules that are recommended for your modules will presumably be available to you online as well. Okay, you don't have to come in. If you want to come into the library, if you're on campus, this is a good, obviously it's a great resource. But because of the current restrictions, there's a little box here which you should read, and basically it says that you need to book a place. If you want to come in and have a place in the library, say, you know, on a given day, you book online in advance and sort of book your place to study in the library. Okay, and again, there's also a thing called the student desk, which again you may have been pointed out to, and that's over in one of the buildings here, the Tierney building, the administration building, and that is a place, for example, if you need official forms stamped or whatever, they will do that for you over on the student desk. But again, you probably won't need to do too much at the student desk in the short term anyway. I suppose of more pressing importance is if you are on campus, because let's say you have a face-to-face lab at 3 o'clock today and you decided to come in this morning, where do you go if you're if you're waiting to go to your lab? And there are spaces now that we have that the university has made available to students, and these, for example, these are 3 here, rooms that are actually sort of set by, and you can just show up and spend an hour or 2 in there. It's got Wi-Fi and so on. You can catch up on your online lectures and what have you. Okay, so again, these buildings, again, will be pointed out to you, I'm sure, where exactly they are on campus. Okay, so those are dedicated buildings, spaces for you to go. Very important that you set up your email address so that your browser or your email app can access this email account. We all have a UCD email address, and it's called UCD Connect. Okay, so this is the way that everybody, the staff of the university, communicates with you. Okay, so if I'm going to tell you, you know, your assignment is due for tomorrow, or I've done something, or the lecture is cancelled, or whatever, I might email you to tell you that. So you need to have that set up properly and be checking it every day. Okay, just like you would for the rest of your emails and your social media. Okay. Obviously, don't forget you have to wear a mask when you're indoors in any of the buildings on campus. And that is that. Okay. So again, my contact details, and I suppose if you have any questions relating to the academic program, you can certainly contact me and I'll point you in the right direction or put you in touch with the right person or whatever. Okay, so thank you very much, and I'll pass over to Deborah. Deborah, have we had any questions or answers or questions?
Yeah, we have had a number of questions, and I think some of the questions will have been answered gone through your presentation.
Yeah.
And then some of them are repeated, but I suppose we'll take, in terms of time, we're 4:05, so
Yeah.
I'll plow on until you tell me to stop. I mean, I think a question in relation to, can you explain the difference between lab, tutorial and a lecture? I suppose we're so used to the terminology, but the students aren't necessarily used to that terminology. So if you could explain that.
Okay, so let's just take something like chemistry, for example. So a chemistry lecture would typically be all of you in normal times, all of you showing up to 300 of you in the same lecture theatre, getting a general lecture on chemical bonding or whatever it is. It's a little bit intimidating for students in that environment, especially if you're right up at the back row, okay, and the lecturer seems very far away. And if the lecturer says, so has anyone any questions, you probably wouldn't dream of putting your hand up to ask a question amongst so many people in the room. A tutorial is where a much smaller group comes together, okay? So typically you might have 10 or 12 people coming together, which might be much more like you're used to in school, in your class. And so that's a much more informal session. Often it's actually given not by the lecturer, but maybe by postgrad students who'll be much closer to your own age. And you might be going through past exam questions or that sort of thing. And they'd be kind of showing you the tricks on how to answer these exam questions and what have you. So it's a much more smaller scale affair. And then, of course, in labs, you'd be going into a chemistry lab, which, you know, again, has actual chemicals and actual test tubes and so on. And you'd be given a lab manual, and you're told, right, today we're going to make, you know, copper sulfate crystals or whatever it is. And, you know, you're going to mix this acid and this base and what have you together. And it's an interesting kind of a hands-on experience. And, you know, it's only, I think, when you actually do something like that physically yourself, that you kind of say, whoa, okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, that something happened there, you know, and smoke came out and what have you. So these are the three sort of main planks, I suppose, on which we base the education of a given module. So hopefully that explains it.
Okay. So somebody's asking in relation to, you know, they're looking at their timetable and they're seeing that a module might be listed in week 1 and 2, and doesn't necessarily express whether it's an online or face-to-face, or it may be face-to-face. So it's just to reiterate that, you know, the face-to-face lecture components are not going to be held on campus. And that, I suppose what's happening is decisions are being made after modules, descriptors are being finalized.
Yeah.
But it is difficult for the students, I think, to be absolutely sure that their timetable is to be completely followed. So that is difficult.
So I think, the guideline you could take it for lectures is that for the next 2 weeks, there won't be any lectures, face-to-face lectures, because they don't want, you know, even the 48 people gathering together. After that, then it'll be reviewed and you'll get an email to update you on that. We hope, of course, that things will calm down a bit and that you can then come in for your groups of 48 lectures. If there is something that's not immediately obvious from your timetable, I would suspect that it'll be clarified by the module coordinator. So, you know, if you log on to your Brightspace page, I don't know whether anyone's got onto that Brightspace yet, but within Brightspace, which you access through this thing called UCD Connect, you can go into your chemistry module, for example, and there it tells you all sorts of information from your lecturer. And the lecturers have all been asked to make it very clear to you, for example, which 49 are due to come in face-to-face on a given week and so on. So if it's not clear from your timetable, it should be clear from your Brightspace page. And if it's not, then please email the module coordinator and say, could you make it clear, please? Okay, so that's the best way to do it.
And Neil, just in relation to that, emailing the module coordinator, somebody was asking, how do I get contact details of my module coordinator?
Okay.
That's available in the Brightspace module.
Yes, exactly, it is.
Available independently. If you looked up Deborah Heaney on a staff list, you'd be able to find my email address and where I am and my telephone number. So there's information.
That's right. And also every module has a module descriptor, as I said, which you can just find by Googling it really, or else you can find your way there through the UCD website. But Googling it is the easiest way to find it. And that will tell you who's responsible for the module, who your lecturer is, and what their email address is. But you're right, Brightspace will have it as the instructor's email, and that's the easiest way to do it. Yeah.
Okay. There's a question just in relation to, do we actually have to register for anything in autumn before the 9th of October? And so no, so everything we have pre-registered you for everything in terms of your labs and tutorials as well. So you and it's all, you know, randomly selected, so yours will not be exactly the same as the person sitting beside you when eventually that happens. So no, essentially there is no panic. There's no panic in terms of your registration for the autumn trimester. And just to reiterate again that there's a little bit of confusion again about the options and the electives. So you're choosing one option and one elective, and you use your elective to choose one additional option. Okay, but there is one option and one elective, so I hope that's clear. And ideally you're trying, you don't have to choose your elective now for spring, but I would suggest you do complete your registration now so that you have a place in the module that you really, really want. There was another question about, if the option is full, can I go on a waiting list? So, you know, I suppose what we're trying to do is plan how many places that we can offer in a module, and we'll have to plan ahead for January and see if the capacity on those modules can change. So capacities can and do change from time to time on modules, and we have plenty of time before January to be able to sort that out.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one thing that people do find a practical issue when they go and they try and get an elective, let's say you want to do, you know, Spanish, intermediate Spanish or something, and you realize that it clashes with something else that you're doing. So one of your core subjects, for example, one of your core modules, and that can be a real pain actually, but unfortunately there isn't much you can do really about that usually. So that sort of limits you a little bit in sometimes it limits you in terms of what's available to you as your electives. And that's actually why a lot of people do end up choosing languages, in fact, because the language center here in UCD is a bit smart, and they've tended to run their, certainly in normal times, they run their modules in the evening. So they typically would, you know, start at 6 in the evening or something. So most people are free then at that time to take them. But I suspect it won't be so bad now. Probably that'll be less of an issue now if a lot of them are online and so on, and you can catch them that way. But just to warn you that you might have clashes with your timetable.
Yes, exactly.
Caroline,
and I suppose the very popular modules will fill up, and if they're not a module in our college, then we've no control about begging and pleading for additional places for you. So it's kind of a first come first serve basis in terms of those electives. I just have one more here.
Sorry, Caroline was wanting to get in there.
Language electives.
Yeah.
We don't register language electives. You have to go to the Applied Language Centre, either by emailing them or going over in the Daedalus building, because they have to assess you as to whether you can take it or not.
Okay, okay.
Okay, there
Great.
are different criteria for taking the language modules, and the programme office is not allowed to register you to any of them. So.
Okay, that's worth knowing. Thanks, Caroline.
One question was, are we going to be given a list of books that we need to get? So I suppose module by module, how does that work?
Yeah, so there will be recommended texts for each module, and you will be told those by your module coordinator. It depends very much, really, from module to module, how necessary or how essential, if you like, they are. For example, in physics that you're going to be doing this year, this trimester, they use a book from, I think it's Wiley, the publisher Wiley, and it's very much, it's got an online sort of component to it. So if you buy the book, you have access to a whole load of online material that's related to the book, which is great, you know. So you might end up spending a little bit more on the book, but you get all this extra stuff. So it's worth, as I say, it does vary from module to module, but you will be given advice about which book they're going to be using, and you know, which ones are better than others, and so on. So hold off until you get your advice on that before you make any investment in books.
Okay, thank you. And there's just a question in relation to advice on laptops.
Yeah.
So we have actually a link on our own website here for information for students on choosing a laptop and the specifications on that. What's best to buy? You may want to mention something on this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good question, and you know, people are saying, right, I'm going to college, I might invest a lot of money in a laptop, and then the question would be, well, would I buy a Mac, for example, or would I buy a PC? And I, for example, I have a Mac myself. I love Macs. However, okay, so going back to what Deborah is saying there, if you go to the website and have a look at that advice, what it's basically saying to you there is, there's no need to invest big money in a laptop in first year. Okay, if you've got access to even a basic laptop that will allow you to get online and have a look at your online stuff and what have you, and run MATLAB, for example, that software that I was talking about in the computing module, if it's anyway decent, even if it's a few years old laptop, it'll be grand for your first year. Okay. You're probably better off waiting if you want to buy something and you have a sort of an oldish one that'll do, better off waiting a year maybe to buy, or even 2 years, because as you know, things improve greatly from year to year in terms of the specs of computers. And by the time you get to later years where you're doing projects and you're using engineering software and so on, you'll want to have the best laptop you can get your hands on. And it has to be said there that typically the engineering software doesn't run so easily on Macs. The licenses tend to be set up more for PCs. Okay, which kind of kills me to say that, as I say, because I love Macs myself. And those of you who are computer heads will know that, for example, with a Mac, you can run Windows, for example, on a Mac, and that's perfect and that's grand, as long as you are capable of doing that yourself. Okay, so some people have an interest in that and they can do it on their whiz on a computer. Some people just, you know, wouldn't have that level of expertise. So think carefully before you buy a computer, and think double carefully before you buy a Mac, I would say. But do have a look at the information that we've put together for you, because that's up to date, and we've just done that this summer actually. So that's the best advice we can give you is on that website.
Great. You know, we have 42 questions. So
okay, Caroline, sorry, you wanted to jump in there.
Some people have submitted their questions in the chat. Can we ask you to submit them via the Q&A so they're all in one place for us? We won't be answering the chat. Okay.
Thank you.
You need to submit them via the Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Caroline. So I'd suggest we won't be able to answer 42 questions here, but what we'll do is compile them, and as I say, we'll send them out in an email to everybody. And I think there is one, there's just one that caught my eye here, maybe just one more, if that's okay, Neil.
Yeah.
So it says, for those commuting from far away or unavoidable unavoidably cocooning, will the scheduled face-to-face content be made available online, or will it be necessary to attend all of these lab/lectures? Also, on a related note, will attendance on the lectures form part of the continuous assessment mark?
Okay, so generally speaking, well, first of all, as regards attending the lectures, they'll all be available online as well. So even if you're there face to face, the lecturer will be recording the lecture and it will be available. Okay, so the only idea obviously is that you will get to meet your lecturer if you come in face to face, and you get to meet your classmates, you know, so you get to know people a bit. So that's really important as well. So from the lecturer's point of view, if you can't make your face to face lectures, there's no penalty. You won't be given marks or losing marks for not attending the, you know, for attendance. Now for the labs, you will need to be at the labs because, but obviously, you know, you can't do a physics lab from your bedroom, you know, and you can't go into a chemistry lab, you know, at home either. So, so that they are really the main things. That those 2 physics labs, 2 chemistry labs, essential that you're here. Also the creativity and design, it's important that you attend there as well, because you are representing, as I said, your design group that day. And if you're not there, the group effectively is let down. Okay. Now, I mean, if you really can't attend, maybe there's a way of contacting somebody else in the group and they can attend instead or whatever. Okay. But mainly the labs they're the main things that you would have to be here for. But that's not too many days, shall we say, that you have to be here. Okay.
Okay. 47 now, so we probably
yeah you're probably a bit tired now looking at our faces.
I'm tired of looking at my own face here at this stage.
Yeah.
Can I just say something?
Of
Some
course.
of the queries are specific to each student. Would you
Okay.
just email the program office and we look at them for you? You can email me directly as first years caroline.mccann@ucd.ie, and I will look at your individual issue. We won't be answering individual issues as part of this Q&A. So just as long as you give me your student number, the module code, and what the issue is, and we can fix it for you in the background.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep,
Perfect.
makes sense.
Okay, well, I think we'll call it a day then, and thanks very much. 265 of you, 262 students showed up, which is great.
No, we had 289.
89, I think, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay. I'm looking at different numbers.
So
here.
did they get bored as they went along? I don't know.
Must be dropping off now.
Okay, so hopefully you found that useful and informative. And as I say, you can send on your questions if you have any more. Okay, so
Great.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you on Monday.